name's Tim and I'm an alcoholic.
Hey Tim.
I'm aware that there may be people who aren't members of AA here, and there may be people who are very new. So I'd like to say, first of all, I don't speak on behalf of AA. And if something I say alarms or upsets you, I wouldn't worry about it. I'm just one person in AA, and there are lots of us here, and you needn't take any notice of it. There's no authority, it's just my experience. But if you are new, welcome, and I hope you find here what I found here, which is, first of all, a permanent solution to my alcoholism, and secondly, a permanent solution to all the other problems in my life. My date of sobriety is 24th of July 1993. My home group is the Brick Lane Big Book Study at 6 o'clock on a Saturday. I'm very welcome there. We go for dinner afterwards at a cheap local curry place, which endears the meeting to a lot of people. So if you can stick it out for an hour listening to people talking about the big book, you get some curry as the reward. And look, I know lots of people, they come to AA and they don't have a drink from their first meeting on, but something magical happens. And when I initially came to AA, something magical happened, and I went home and took the extraordinary action of pouring all of my alcohol away. I've never poured a drop of alcohol away in my life, but I poured all of the alcohol away. But whatever the magic was in my first meeting didn't stick. A discomfort within me got more and more pronounced until a few weeks later I couldn't stand the pressure anymore, and I left the house and went and got some alcohol, and there was no ability to fight it. In my mind, I tried to have an argument with the good side, tried to have an argument with the side that wanted to drink. But I felt that I was just going through the motions. I was going to lose anyway. I wanted to sort of to feel as though at least I'd had a go at fighting it, but I knew I couldn't fight it. The two features of my drinking which show me that I'm an alcoholic is first of all, when I have a drink, I simply don't know where it's going to lead, how long I'm going to be drinking for. I was sober for a while in 1991, and for whatever reason I started drinking again in September of 1991, and it was the February of 1993 before it even occurred to me to stop again. I have the sort of mind where if I'm sober for a while, everything starts to get better, and at least superficially, everything starts to get better. But if I have the first drink, even the memory of having been sober is wiped. I'm back in another world where the only normal thing appears to be to drink and drink and drink and drink and drink and fuck everything else. So it's incredibly dangerous for me to drink because I can be out there for years. And the other element of it is left to my own devices. I will go back to it again because there is an enormous yearning for connection with the universe. I couldn't have labelled it that at the time, but that's what it was. And alcohol gave me a temporary feeling of connection with the universe. And it was fleeting, and the side effects were terrible. The devastation in my life because of my drinking was terrible. But at least I had this momentary release where I felt connected for a few minutes or an hour or so before the evening would take its dark turns. And this is the predicament I found myself in when I had my last slip, which, as I said, on the 24th of July 1993. And on that particular occasion, perhaps fortuitously, I was run over, I was arrested, catastrophic things happened within literally about 45 minutes of starting to drink that day. And for whatever reason, I had an insight, and this is one of the impressive and sometimes chilling things about alcoholism and recovery is the insights I've had which have changed my life. I haven't gone and got them, they've come to me. I can't make insights come to me, but I had an insight that day that if I drink, I may never come back. And the second insight I had was that what was working for some people, which was just going to meetings and chit-chatting with like-minded fellows, as they say, was not enough. I needed something more profound to alter inside me if I was going to be kept away from the first drink. And the third insight was that I didn't care anymore about my so-called external life, or even my experience of it. I just wanted the dignity of never having another drink again. And as soon as that was the only thing I was demanding of AA, was that it keep me sober, I was willing to take the actions without any strings attached. Because the trouble is, before I'd been looking, I wanted the moon on a stick, and as soon as it wasn't being delivered to me, I think that was why I was stropping off and going to the off license. I think underlying it was that this enormous sense of entitlement, which had to be beaten out of me, frankly, by alcohol. And so what happened in 1993 was a process of not transformation of me, because I think I'm the same person that I always was, but transformation of three things: my attitudes and my thinking and my behaviour. My alcoholism consists in a desire to manipulate my emotions directly with alcohol and occasionally some other activities. What I've had to become comfortable with is that in my sobriety, the three things that can be changed are my thinking, my behaviour, and my attitudes, and they will eventually change how I feel, but not on my timetable. And in my first year, it's interesting, this line, you're as happy as you make up your mind to be. I took very great offence at this when I was new. And of course my problem was that I would go to meetings and I'd hear this. I'd hear, there was a meeting I used to go to because the instruction, I suppose, on the programme was terribly good. They were called Joys of Recovery meeting in Chelsea. I haven't been for a very long time. But aside from all of the very good instruction about the steps, they would throw out things like misery is optional. And I was very miserable, and it didn't feel optional. It didn't feel remotely optional. But of course, there's a great deal of wisdom behind these lines, and what one has to do is grab someone who actually understands and say, well, what does it actually mean, misery is optional? What does it mean you're as happy as you make up your mind to be? And what I was taught, particularly over my first year, and I got this from doing steps 4 and 5, and then later on in the first year, steps 8 and 9. And I pretty much completed the first 9 steps in just over the first year. My step 8, by the way, was shoddy, and I needed to go back to it a number of years later, but I did complete step 9 to the best of my ability. What was really clear, what became really clear during my first year, was that I was the author of my own suffering. I wasn't the author of the things which happened to me. A lot of rotten things happened to me. For instance, in my family, I've got 3 brothers and all 3 are dead, and I have 3 sisters and 2 are mentally ill. So it's been a bit of a rough ride in my family over the last 30 years. And there's lots of pain associated with that, but frankly, most of my suffering throughout my life has been based on worrying about what people will think about me and worrying about if I'm going to be successful enough. There's nothing noble here. There's nothing grand. This is not some. This is not humanity. This is ego. It's something else. And if you're human, you get to have an ego too. But I discovered that it was incredible and excessive and entitled demands I had of all the people in my life, of all the situations in my life, which were giving me the suffering. Pain I can deal with, but the suffering, the constant whirring in my head as I run in my mind over and over all of your injuries towards me, which are really your failures to meet my excessive and entitled demands. This is the suffering that was optional, and this is what I was taught bit by bit over the years to dismantle the underlying attitudes, to change the thinking deliberately. I thought for a very long time that I was a victim of my thinking, that if a thought came into my mind, I had to run with it, and if I spent the whole day obsessing about negative things, that this was happening to me. I've been taught that no, I'm doing it to myself. I'm not responsible for the thought that comes into my mind, but I am responsible for training my mind to turn it onto other topics, and as it says in the big book, we ask God to remove the whatever it is and turn our thoughts to those we can help. And I discovered the capacity in my first year, even though to come into AA when you're 21, you've got to have a lot else wrong with you, frankly. No disrespect to anyone who happens to be 21 and doesn't, perhaps there are some exceptions, but there were reasons within me which drove me into recovery at the age of 21, and they weren't going to get fixed in the first year. But I found the capacity for joy in the first year. And that came out of connection with other people, telling the truth to other people and hearing them tell the truth to me, feeling at one with meetings, doing very, very simple menial service in meetings, but feeling as though I was connected and I had a role and I had a purpose. Making my joy in the programs come not from attaining a particular level, but from speed of progress. If I'm putting a lot of time into the program, you can feel the program like the wind whistling past your ears, and it gives you this amazing exhilaration. And if when I found and hung out with other people who are doing the same, I borrow their exhilaration too. So I had a huge amount, even though I was very troubled, I had a huge amount of joy in the first year. And what I've discovered since then is that my joy is in direct proportion to the amount of time and effort I'm placing service to others inside and outside AA over my own desires for sex and money, power and prestige and comfort and thrills and appearance, which are my 7 go-tos of my ego. And just lastly, on the other point, if I'm not showing people my feelings will help. The Just for J card, I'm sure everyone in here, or almost everyone knows, it originated in Al-Anon. So it originated from a program which is responding to a slightly different set of problems. And I'm an Al-Anon member as well and have been for over 20 years. And one of the things that I will do in Al-Anon is, or rather the thing which Al-Anon treats, involves me running around showing you how upset I am in order that I can manipulate your behaviour. If I can make you feel guilty enough for how I feel, you will change, then I will be comfortable. So I've got to be incredibly careful about exactly how and when and to whom I unburden what is going on inside me. I've got a friend in Texas called Katie who says that sponsees will come to her and say they want to talk about their emotions. And she said, emotions? You want to talk about your emotions? Your emotions are coming from a delusional mindset. Let's talk about delusion. And what I've discovered is that although there's some natural pain in life, 99% of my suffering has come from delusional ideas about what is good for me. And this is why I'm incredibly careful in my relationship with my other half, who we've been together for 11 years. He's not in recovery, doesn't need to be. If I'm upset with him, he is the last person I reveal it to. I go and deal with it with my sponsor or my friends, and if what comes out of that is I need to go to my other half and say, can we do this differently? I have a request. Could we try this, perhaps? And I can do that in a polite and in an uninvolved way. And then it's heard well. If I do it when I'm all upset, it's a disaster. And I found that almost every single time I've been upset with him, it's because I have an unreasonable demand. And for the remaining times, I just need to practice a bit of patience. So it's not an injunction to keep everything inside. It's an injunction to be discriminating about who one shares things with. And so I've had to learn the hard way in lots of ways to be careful who I share with, but I make sure I share. I don't know if any of that has helped anyone or made any sense, but my time is up, so I'm going to stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, we'll now open the meeting and sharing, and the meeting's now open. To Al-Anon.